Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. Thanks, Giuliano, for that nice introduction. In fact, I've been with People's Choice 25 years on the 28th of February. Quite a long time. A lot of changes that I'm sure most people in this room have experienced over that journey. So it's a pleasure to be here with such a respected organisation as the Rotary Club of Adelaide. And I understand we may have a few People's Choice members here today, so thank you for coming and for your business. And Giuliano was one of the directors of Australian Central Credit Union prior to merging with Savings and Loans, so thank you, Giuliano, for inviting me here. This afternoon I'd like to speak with you about a topic which is rarely out of the media spotlight, the state of the South Australian economy. As the head of a significant Australian business, proudly headquartered here in South Australia, the economic health of our state and the confidence of our businesses and consumers is never far from my mind either. But first, let me tell you a little about People's Choice Credit Union, which in itself is a major South Australian success story. Indeed, People's Choice and the Rotary Club of Adelaide have more than a few things in common. We're both member-based organisations. We're both the largest organisations of our type in South Australia and among the largest nationally. We're both committed to serving and fostering healthy communities. People's Choice is a relatively new organisation, but one with a proud history. We formed on the 1st of December 2009 through the merger of Australian Central and Savings and Loans credit unions to form Australia's second largest credit union. We have more than 350,000 members throughout Australia, branches in most states and territories, more than $8 billion of funds under management and advice, and we employ over 1,100 people, with the vast majority here in South Australia, and importantly, provide a corporate head office environment for people wanting to develop their careers here and not move interstate. Credit unions are different from banks because our members are not just our customers, they're also our owners. People's Choice members are part of 4.5 million Australians who choose to do their banking with an organisation that is owned by its customers. We reinvest our profits into creating better products for members by providing great service and advice, rather than giving returns to shareholders like banks. In fact, our sole reason for being is best described by our corporate purpose statement: working together for a better future, by helping our members save, borrow, protect and plan to get ahead in life through transactions and savings accounts, fixed term investments, residential and personal lending, debit and credit cards, insurance, business banking and financial planning services. At People's Choice, we also take great pride in supporting the economic and social well-being of our members and the community. This support takes many forms, including corporate social responsibility partnerships with the Cancer Council, the Big Issue, Writing for the Disabled, Heart Kids and Life Without Barriers. The People's Choice Community Lottery, which has raised close to $10 million for more than 1,400 not-for-profit organisations over nearly the last 30 years. Employee fundraising and volunteering, sponsorship of sporting groups and events such as our friends at the Adelaide Strikers, the iconic Credit Union Christmas Pageant and the People's Choice Classic as part of the Santos Tour Down Under. To give you a sense of how we're making a difference in the community, over the last few months we have funded the establishment of a Heart Kids Northern Territory Family Support Coordinator at the Royal Darwin Hospital to help families who have a child with heart disease, collected hundreds of gifts for a variety of charities and raised funds for our community partners through our annual Christmas appeal that focuses on members and staff. We recently raised $120,000 for the Cancer Council at the inaugural People's Choice Undies Run for bowel cancer to promote awareness and prevention of bowel cancer and to provide over 4,000 more free testing kits. We've partnered with the Big Issue by subscribing to the Women's Subscription Enterprise in all our branches and providing copies of the magazine to all key corporate partners, which funds the employment of 2 Melbourne women to support their employment, training and pathway opportunities who may have been homeless, marginalised or disadvantaged. and we'll expand our support for the women's subscription enterprise into Adelaide later this year. We funded the refurbishment of the Riding for the Disabled Zocala built facilities and commenced fundraising for the RDA through the People's Choice Community Lottery in South Australian branches and online. Our staff have volunteered hundreds of hours for the Salvation Army, the Cancer Council and other community groups. We've raised thousands of dollars through our monthly gold coin casual days and workplace giving program. And we have seen many of our staff donate blood through the Club Red Group. These programs and many others are making a real difference across the communities where we live and work. As a major enterprise that serves about 285,000 South Australians each day, we have a very clear insight into the economic mood of the state. For many economists, politicians and the media, that mood is a gloomy one. South Australia has certainly had its share of economic setbacks, such as the deferral of the Olympic Dam investment decision, and we've had a number of highly publicised job reductions. Yet, as a state, we are not alone in responding to the economic challenges confronting the country. In fact, at People's Choice, we're seeing South Australians are starting to actually ignore the negative talk and are starting to get on with things. Towards the end of last year, our personal loan business jumped 38% year on year, and that has continued into January, with personal loans up 24% on expectations. And most of that is for discretionary items, such as new and used cars, home renovations, household goods and holidays. That suggests people are becoming more confident. People aren't bunkered down with a negative, gloomy outlook. The upswing in our figures is also reflected in the Australian Bureau of Statistics data, which shows personal loans across the whole of South Australia are up 17% over the past year. Of course, there are individuals and families doing it tough, and I don't want to downplay that, but I think the big picture is looking better. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the cost of living index for people with jobs rose just 1.1% last year, while wages grew 3.7%. So as South Australians, we need to be confident about our state, about what's working, about the significant infrastructure investment underway, such as here at Adelaide Oval, the development of our state-of-the-art new hospital, and the various major road projects behind it. Our business is seeing good signs of growth and confidence returning to the mums and dads out there who are seeing conditions right now as quite favourable to them. Low borrowing interest rates, relatively low unemployment, house prices starting to move up again, and competitive rates on savings and investment products, and of course the share market moving up. And while there are certainly challenges with South Australia's economy, I don't think the situation is as bad as some headlines might suggest. Our economy is still growing, and while unemployment is moving slightly upwards, it is coming off a very low base. The Olympic Dam deferral was disappointing, but let's not forget it has eased the escalating cost of business that was reducing the competitiveness of other economic sectors in the state. Just look at the impact of the cost of and shortage of labour in Western Australia as evidence of the possible adverse flow on impact of other sectors with such a large concentration of investment in one major project. And I have to wonder if there's any benefit in all of us continually to compare South Australia to Western Australia or Queensland, which have benefited enormously from resource booms. We can't just go out and create a giant coal deposit or an iron ore mountain, so we must do the best with what we have and focus on what makes our state great. We need to focus on our own game, have long-term plans, and work to ensure our economy is as diverse as possible. We need to change our attitude to one of the glass being half full of opportunity and not half empty. Success is not achieved in an environment of negativity. We also need to be creative and daring, traits that have made People's Choice such a successful business. Let me turn briefly to our latest South Australian challenge, our new state logo. Everyone has an opinion about the new South Australian logo, but let's not talk it to death. I can assure you that I experienced a very similar challenge recently when we created the new People's Choice brand and logo. People in the main adverse to change, a theory called status quo bias. People are resistant to change because they like what they have. But here we are, not 2 years since we launched our new brand and logo in July 2011, and it's now well accepted and strongly recognised, and people have moved on. We could spend the next 100 years bogged down in debating the details of any particular logo because we all have an opinion. But we've got to avoid that. Some great thinking has gone into creating a new state logo, so let's all get behind this one and get it out there where it can do some good and be recognised and be proud to be South Australian. The concept of branding South Australia is a positive one. We're one region in a large and competitive world, so if we gain attention, that's good. I'm very proud of South Australia. It's a great place to live and visit, and our businesses can compete on a national and global basis. I think the Centros Tour Down Under is a great example of how we can take on the world and create a great event and bring people to this state. So we can take on other states in the world and be successful. We've proven that many times. People's Choice started out as several small local credit unions, and one of your members was one of the founding contributors to one of the credit unions that are now part of People's Choice, and hopefully proud of what you've seen be created. And we're now one of Australia's largest and still growing strong. As a mutual, membership is a primary growth measurement for us, and we're looking very healthy. Year to date, we have a net membership growth of over 5,800, which is more than 40% ahead of budget, and our new memberships are up 25% on expectations in January. And this growth is coming from all around Australia, not just here in this state, as we continue to focus on building our business in new markets, as well as here in South Australia. Last year, we grew our national footprint substantially by opening 8 new branches in Melbourne and the Australian Capital Territory. It is early days, but they are already performing well, and the people of Canberra and Melbourne have also taken to our highly successful community lottery, which is just so fresh, new and different there, and a great community engagement program. So there's plenty for us to be excited about. We're ambitious and we have a plan. Financial conditions remain highly competitive, with financial institutions fighting even harder for business than ever before. Our half-yearly results were very sound. We're ahead of where we budgeted, with profit after tax and normal items of 12.6 million, 46% above budget. And we've enjoyed some very solid sales results and momentum in the back half of 2012. We're under no illusions about the continued competition we face and the ups and downs of the economy at present. But we're very happy with our business momentum because we have focus and we have a plan. The idea that banks are tightening credit policies is actually a myth. It's possible that businesses may need to contribute a greater proportion of their own funds than previously when seeking to borrow, but the reality is that financial institutions have money to lend to support business growth and therefore employment. We have money to lend, and we're building momentum to provide a range of services and advice to small business. I'd encourage any small businesses who are interested in changing their banking relationship to talk to us. As a society, we're getting more and more confident in conducting business online. This is really the new frontier for banking services. People conducting their everyday banking online is well established, but we're now seeing a big move to people securing new products online. For example, people taking out personal loans with us online has increased substantially over the year, up by 70%, and that's only going to increase. And this has major implications for our growth plans. If we're looking to build a presence, say, in Queensland, do we need to do that with branches on the ground? Or can we do it by just capturing people online? As an example, only 2 to 3 years ago, the proportion of our personal loans originated online was less than 10%. And we are projecting that to be over 25% by the end of this year, and within the next 2 to 3 years, more like 50%. A massive change in the way people engage with financial services organisations and businesses generally. The answer is, though, you can't avoid and ignore what you traditionally have. The future will be a mix of branch, online, mobile, call centre and so on. And that mix will continue to change quite differently to what it was just a few years ago, but organisations have to be flexible and adaptable. Already today, we promote our products online in every state and territory of Australia, and we have a growing number of members who come to us online, even in states where we're yet to open branches. That's exciting, and that gives us further belief that there is a market for us for credit unions and the future is bright, particularly for businesses who are focused in South Australia and have an opportunity to invest and grow their businesses nationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Peter's allowed a lot of time for some questions, so are there any questions? Thanks, John.
So regarding South Australia's finances, you didn't touch much on it, but you're in that business. It seems we need to borrow to grow. At what point, we're now 14 billion last year, at what point do we get the tipping point? And when do you expect we're going to pay the 14 billion back?
Well, every business, including public entities like the state or local government, have to invest for the future. And you normally do that through either raising share funds or borrowing funds. You also have to have a very clear plan of how you're actually going to invest that money for future returns. And the state is actually investing in infrastructure and growth, but I would say that the government itself has to rebalance its balance sheet of expenditure, where it is actually using the funds raised from state taxes and revenue and redirect that into paying those loans down over time. But if we don't invest, we'll decay. So the solution is not to sit on your hands and freeze. You have to have a clear vision, you have to have a clear objective of what you're going to use the funds for, but you have to manage your finances as well to actually afford to repay those facilities as well.
Peter, we've just read that a community group in Kayabra have operated as almost a people's bank, collecting money from the community and distributing it out to those that need it. But it exposed itself in this general financial situation, and as a consequence they're in receivership. And the response to that seems to be that they weren't properly regulated within our government circles. They didn't fall under APRA or prudential arrangements. Where does your bank sit, or your financial institution sit in this context, and how do you differ from those sorts of community enterprises?
We are what's called an authorised deposit-taking institution. We're designated by the federal government and governed under the regulatory regime, the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority. And any organisation that presents itself as a banking organisation that takes deposits from the community or business is regulated by APRA. That's banks, credit unions, mutual banks and building societies. There are, however, some trust schemes that are out there, and if I'm thinking of the organisation that you're referring to, that operate under the Australian Securities and Corporation ASIC. They aren't regulated by APRA, and they present themselves as offering a banking service, but they're really offering a debenture investment service. Those funds are generally raised and invested in commercial or property mortgages with a higher risk profile than organisations that APRA regulate. I can assure you APRA is very diligent in prudentially regulating credit unions and banks to the same high standards. So from our perspective, we are under the same regulatory regime as the big four banks, and therefore as prudentially safe as they are. However, there are segments of some businesses that are operating outside of that, but the government has announced an extreme tightening of those regulations because of the recent failures of mortgage schemes and trust schemes that operate outside of the APRA environment. So I expect to see that far more diligently focused on by government in the future. But certainly, you can be sure your funds are safe with credit unions and banks, all regulated by APRA, and there is a Australia-wide financial claims scheme that protects depositors and managed by APRA as well. So your funds are safe.
Are credit unions carry the government guarantee on deposits?
Yes.
And if they do, what's the limit to which they give that guarantee now? It used to be about $1 million.
During the global financial crisis, the federal government put a guarantee in place of $1 million for all depositors. That was at a time when there was a lot of systemic issues globally. Australia, though, never really had the concerns of overseas, but there was a concern about funds being transferred out of the country, and sort of a country run. Since the global financial crisis has settled down, the financial claims scheme that I referred to earlier, the government has put a formal structure around that, and that limit has been reduced to $250,000 per approved deposit-taking institution and per customer. So, if, an example, if you have funds with People's Choice Credit Union of $200,000, you are guaranteed by that financial compensation claims scheme that the government stands behind. And that is no different to Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and so on. However, I'll take the opportunity to also have a little dig at some of our competitors. If you have a deposit with Westpac and you go into Bank SA, you put a deposit there and you exceed that $250,000, you have one $250,000 limit across both those institutions because there is one banking licence issued for them, not two. And that's something that the mutual banking industry is lobbying the government to get greater clarity on because we believe there's confusion in the marketplace.
Makes sense. That's actually makes sense.
Time for one more quick one. Somebody's desperate.
It's been suggested that the cooperatives movement is a sort of a counter to the globalisation of very big money firms and a way of maintaining some sort of power or control at the local level. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, there is a global cooperative movement that tries, and it goes beyond banking, it goes across all forms of industry where communities get together and share infrastructure and process and governance. Certainly the mutual banking industry is represented in the cooperative movement by the World Council of Credit Unions, and we are there as what we believe, providing a choice to people in banking, a choice that is values-based, has you as our owners' interests at heart rather than shareholders who would get a dividend return. So our focus by our staff, by our board and by me every day is how do we actually make sure that we're looking after our members as our owners rather than driving a profit to pay dividends to the shareholders of those banks. And so I wouldn't call it a counterbalance. I think it's a genuine alternative to people that really want personal service, great advice, and also to be considered as an owner.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Malcolm, for that last question. Somebody got a couple of notes. I'll get there. Okay. Peter has given us an understanding of one of the SA's, South Australians' icon organisations, one that we may not have in our face all the time, certainly a bit of a quiet achiever. It's interesting, when we all walk out today of the doors that way and just pause on the balcony and have a look at the skyline. You know, I like looking at skylines. And you'll see about a dozen emblems or logos on top of buildings. 3 of those are accommodation houses, Intercontinental, etc. 3 of those are banks, and don't ask me which one's missing. There's also another couple, maybe 2 or 3 corporate organisations. One of those is People's Choice, the People's Choice logo. So as you can see, just by standing outside here and looking at the logos on the buildings, Peter's organisation is in fact one of the absolute icon organisations in the state. And one of the most interesting bits that I got out of today's talk is, and something I'm not aware of, is the level of community service that, or the level of work that People's Choice puts back to its community in its, and I think Peter covered those areas quite significantly. So certainly I'd like to congratulate Peter on his achievements both in his role as Managing Director, and also thank him very much for talking today, and please join me in thanking him as I present him with the customary